Hi, my name is Brian Gantman, and I am the Government Relations Director and in-house counsel for K11 Air 1 Radio, and welcome to the nation's capital. Well, let's start off with the non-commercial agreements with BMI, ASCAP, and CSAC. The National Religious Broadcasters Non-Commercial Music License Committee was able to negotiate private rates, and those agreements run from 2013 through 2017, and they are based on the population count of the coverage area for the stations that are played. With the commercial agreements, most of the agreements are under the Radio Music License Committee. Those cover the years 2010 to 2016. They're generally based on a percentage of the revenue for the commercial broadcaster, and it's about 1.7% of gross revenues. Sound Exchange, for those who are not familiar, is the organization that collects and distributes money for music that is played over the internet, cable, or satellite, and obviously with our stations it would be for the internet. There are two main types of agreements for non-commercial stations. One is the Webcaster Settlement Act, and that covers streaming between the years 2006 and 2015, and that was a privately brokered deal between the National Religious Broadcasters Non-Commercial Music License Committee and Sound Exchange. There's also the CRB rates, and those were the ones that were issued by the Copyright Royalty Board, and that covers the years 2011 to 2015. And it's the same thing with the commercial broadcasters, except that the Webcaster Settlement Agreement was between the National Association of Broadcasters and Sound Exchange, and likewise the CRB rates were the ones that were ordered by the Copyright Royalty Board. Those cover the years 2011 to 2015 as well. They are not covered for the non-commercial stations, and I'll tell you why in just a second. With the commercial agreements, it does include the streaming. And the reason is they're already paying a percentage of the revenue, so that's kind of captured. When it comes to the non-commercial agreements, BMI, ASCAP, and CSAC are not covered by those terrestrial agreements, and there are either side agreements or there's a side agreement that's actually going to be finalized fairly shortly with CSAC on a flat fee basis. BMI and ASCAP are paid kind of on a hybrid basis based on page views of the website and streaming sessions and streaming hours. One of the things to keep in mind right now is with Sound Exchange, the agreements for streaming are going to be expiring at the end of the year 2015. So right now, the rate setting process for the years 2016 to 2020 is actually underway. It started earlier this year, and if an agreement can't be reached for non-commercial and for commercial broadcasters, the proceedings will actually, the cases will be heard early next year with a decision probably middle to late of next year. Right now, the rates that we have cannot necessarily be carried over to the future years. So if you are paying excess fees, right now non-commercial broadcasters get a certain amount of free listening hours. That's not guaranteed going forward. There's no guarantee what the rates are going forward. So you may want to look at your streaming operations to figure out what are you going to do if the rates are more than you are willing to pay or can afford to pay. Sound Exchange doesn't necessarily go out and regulate it, but they do kind of keep track. So just because you're streaming and no one's come to you and say you need to pay these rates or you need to file these documents doesn't mean you're operating legally. You need to still operate under a license agreement, and if you're operating on one of the statutory license agreements, you need to be registered with the U.S. Copyright Office, you need to file forms with Sound Exchange, you need to file monthly reports on your usage and quarterly or monthly reports on the music that you're listening to. And so they're relying on the broadcasters to self-report, but if you don't, there can be some huge consequences because you don't want to be violating copyright laws because the penalties can be severe. Actually, one thing to add to the things to be prepared for, there's a lot of action right now on Capitol Hill regarding copyright issues. In fact, the House Judiciary Committee, which is the body that oversees this issue, is looking at comprehensive copyright reform, and in fact had 2 hearings in the month of June just to look at music licensing issues. So there may be issues with potential increases for royalties for songwriters and potential increases, or actually maybe the institution of a performance royalty for playing music over the air. There's a lot that actually goes on behind the scenes that people are not aware of, and I'd like to look at it since the music licensing is really one of the biggest things that could impact the bottom line of our station. So look at it kind of from the sense of ICU, which is intensive care unit. Involvement, contribution, and understanding. We need people's involvement. We need to understand where everybody's coming from in order to be able to represent everybody. As we finalize these agreements with BMI, ASCAP, CSAC, and Sound Exchange, we need to know everybody's particular concerns, how your stations operate in order to make sure that you're covered as well as possible. We need contributions. The litigation can get rather expensive. The last go around with Sound Exchange, probably about 6-7 years ago, cost several $100,000, and we need to make sure that we can go as far in the litigation and not have to cut back or settle early because we don't have proper funding. And then there's the issue of understanding. There's a huge misunderstanding of really what goes on with music licensing. There's a lot of people who don't understand the differences between performance rights, which are what's paid to the artist and the label, and songwriter or composer royalties, which get paid to the people who write the song. So understanding those issues and understanding how the different stations operate and what the concerns and needs are is really going to be able to help, us going forward.